Hello and welcome to Woke Watch, where today we'll be looking at an interesting double standard applied to woke TV and woke Hollywood, because we know most TV executives and all of Hollywood are woke as fuck. You put on any new TV series and most of the time you can see it's been a box ticking exercise. Every group must be represented, and of course diversity and inclusion are fantastic, but often it's been done just for the sake of it. For example, last year Netflix released The Sandman, originally written by Neil Gaiman, and in that series almost every character was race and or gender swapped. Now, it didn't detract from the series, I loved it, but nor did it add anything. Next month Netflix is releasing a new documentary series, but the historical figure they're discussing doesn't fit in with their woke ideology, so they've decided to just lie about her. The series is produced by Jada Pinkett Smith, and that alone should be enough to stop any sane person watching it. Although I guess if you don't, she might send Will round to slap you. The series is called Cleopatra, and in it, the famous queen is depicted as an African warrior queen. One small problem: out of those three words, only one is true. She was a queen, she wasn't a warrior, and she definitely wasn't African. In the trailer, a woman says, "My grandma told me, forget what they told you at school, Cleopatra was black." Well, I'm sorry to have to say this, but that lady's grandma is a fucking liar. It's well known that Cleopatra was Greek Macedonian. She was white, and we know this because there are sculptures of her that were made while she was alive. She appears on the currency. And isn't it more insulting that rather than finding an actual African queen from history and making a documentary series about her, instead they've taken Cleopatra and race swapped her? Well, I know at least one person finds it offensive, because an Egyptian lawyer is suing Netflix for, and I quote, blackwashing history. I'll stress again, those are the lawyer's words, not mine. But surely if whitewashing history, taking a historical figure who wasn't white and then portraying them as white, is wrong, then the same has to be done if it's another race. And of course it's not just Netflix doing this. The giant faceless corporation Disney, who have made it clear over recent years they don't give a fuck about writing any new material. They're just taking their old films and making them into live action remakes, which are always worse and very woke. And in those, they're often race swapping characters as well. Now, these are fictional characters, so it shouldn't matter. It doesn't really matter. But this year we have the remake of The Little Mermaid with Halle Bailey playing Ariel. If I'm honest, I'm not emotionally invested enough to give a fuck who plays the Little Mermaid. But, and I covered this at the time when it was announced, there were two sides to the argument. Some people said, well, Hans Christian Andersen, who wrote the original story, he was Danish, so it's unlikely he would have seen the Little Mermaid as being black. And the other side of the argument were people saying, well, it's good that she's being played by a black actress. That's more representation and positive role models. And the thing is, I agree with both sides of that argument. But then over on the far left are the woke brigade screaming, if you don't agree with this casting decision 100%, you're a fascist! Like I said, Disney have done this before. They've remade Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, Mulan, Aladdin, The Lion King, and all of them are crap. But next year, they're doing the live action remake of Snow White. And I think they're pushing it too far with this, because the actress who will be playing Snow White is called Rachel Ann Zegler, and she's Latino. Now, she's a very beautiful woman. The issue is, Snow White gets her name because her skin is as white as snow. And when the Wicked Queen asks the magic mirror who is the fairest of them all, to be fair means to be beautiful, but also to have a pale complexion. It's unlikely in the original story Snow White's last name was Rodriguez. However, I'm certain they'll have to change the ending from the original, because in that, the prince rocks up as Snow White is laying supposedly dead in a glass coffin, gets off his horse and kisses her. Now, I know the royals are a bit weird, but interfering with the corpse is taking it too far. Why did none of the seven dwarfs go, mate, she's fucking dead? But now in 2023, or this will be 2024, if he kisses a woman while she's sleeping, then that isn't consensual. Not only that, but recently Disney released the live-action remake of Peter Pan, now called Peter Pan and Wendy. We've got to include the women. In that, though, Peter Pan, is now Indian, or at least of Indian origin, and that's fair enough. Tinkerbell is now black. That's absolutely fine. The Lost Boys now include girls, and that's going too far, because in J.M. Barrie's original story, there were only lost boys because he said only boys would be stupid enough to fall out of their cots. And Wendy was brought there to be their mother. That feels weird in this day and age. Don't worry about the villain though. Captain Hook is being played by Jude Law, so at least the bad guy's white. So keep that in mind, and now we get to the woke double standard. A couple of weeks ago, Disney announced it was making a live-action remake of Lilo and Stitch. And the actress picked to play Nani, who I think is Lilo's older sister, is called Rachel Adugon. And the woke brigade lost their fucking minds. Hordes of screaming wokies took to Twitter, crying racism, saying Lilo and Stitch is set in Hawaii, so why on earth would they cast a white actress to play Nani? There is an issue with that argument, because Rachel, she is a Pacific Islander. She's from Hawaii, born and bred. So they made a hasty retreat and came back with, this is colourist, because the actress is fairly pale-skinned for a Hawaiian. And colorism is the argument that people of colour who have paler skin get preferential treatment, and there may be some truth in that. However, the woke brigade completely lost me when they presented this argument. She doesn't look like what she does in the cartoon. So that's the issue, is it? In these remakes, the characters have to look like what they did in the cartoon. So let's remind ourselves again of the 1950s animated film Peter Pan. At that point they didn't mention Wendy in the title, where Tinkerbell was white with blue eyes and blonde hair. And here she is in the 2023 film. You can't have it both fucking ways. Is that a fair argument? That when it comes to race swapping characters, either everyone's fair game or no one is. And when it comes to historical documentaries, I think that's bang out of order. You shouldn't change the race of a historical figure. But of course, woke people, they want this double standard, because being woke means blaming everything on everyone else whilst never being accountable for one's actions. Anyway, I'm off home now to call Netflix because I want to star in a historical drama. I'll be taking on the role of Nelson Mandela. Actually, thinking about it, I believe there are people at Netflix who would go for that, because if they could cast Nelson Mandela as a middle-aged white guy, finally we could explore all the terrorism he took part in. As ever, thanks for watching.